The holding cell smelled like defeat and disinfectant. I pressed my sensory stalks against the observation glass, watching the human child sit perfectly still on the metal bench. She couldn't have been more than 8 solar cycles old by their reckoning, small even for her species, with tangled dark hair and eyes that held far too much calculation for something so young. Subject arrived 3 hours ago, my supervisor, Krell, muttered beside me. His scales rippled with nervous energy. Found her in the abandoned mining sector on Outpost Gamma. Alone. No ship, no guardian, no explanation. I tilted my head. Scans? Clean. No weapons, no contraband. He paused, mandibles clicking. Just her and that thing. That thing sat in the corner of the cell, separated from the child by 15 feet of reinforced flooring. Even through the triple-layered containment glass, I could feel my survival instincts screaming at me to run. The creature was perhaps 2 feet long, covered in coarse, black and white fur that looked like it had survived several explosions. Stocky legs, curved claws, and a face that seemed permanently configured into an expression of pure, distilled violence. Its small eyes tracked every movement in the corridor outside with predatory focus. "What is it?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. Krell consulted his datapad. Records identify it as a Mellivora capensis. Common designation, honey badger. Native to Earth, Category 7, aggressive fauna. He looked up. That's the same category as their great white sharks. I felt my skin shift to a pale yellow, the Vorian equivalent of going bloodless. And we brought it aboard? Are you experiencing cerebral malfunction? Warden's orders. The child won't speak without it present. As if summoned by our conversation, Warden Thrace appeared at the end of the corridor. He was a Brutaxian, all muscle and poor decisions, standing nearly 8 feet tall with skin like armor plating. He'd run detention facilities on 6 different stations, each one with a reputation for harsh discipline and zero tolerance. He strode toward the cell with the confidence of someone who'd never met a problem he couldn't solve with intimidation. "Enough waiting," Thrace growled, his voice like rocks in a grinder. "I'll get answers from this little pest." "Sir," I began, but he was already keying open the cell door. The honey badger's head snapped up immediately. A low sound emerged from its throat, something between a growl and a promise of dismemberment. Thrace ignored it. He crossed the cell in 3 massive strides and grabbed the creature by the scruff of its neck, lifting it off the ground. The badger exploded into motion, twisting and snapping, claws raking through empty air inches from his face. "Pathetic animal," Thrace sneered. "Let's see how brave you are in the isolation pen." That's when the child spoke for the first time. "You'll pay for that." Her voice was soft, conversational, even, like she was commenting on the weather or the quality of the recycled air. But something in those 4 words made every scale on my body stand at attention. Thrace laughed, a sound like breaking stone. "Is that a threat, little human? From you?" He shook the badger roughly. The creature's snarls intensified. "I've broken insurgents twice your size. What are you going to do?" The girl stood up slowly. She was barely 4 feet tall, wearing clothes that had seen better days, her small hands hanging loose at her sides. When she looked at Thrace, her expression remained perfectly calm. "Nothing right now," she said quietly. "But Brutus doesn't forget. And neither do I." "Brutus?" Thrace glanced at the writhing animal in his grip. "You named this mangy rat?" He turned toward the door, still holding the badger at arm's length. "I'm confiscating it. Dangerous fauna protocols. You can have it back when you learn some respect." He stepped into the corridor. I backed away quickly. Krell was already halfway to the next junction. The girl walked to the edge of her cell, gripped the bars, and smiled. It was not a nice smile. 48 hours, she said. Give or take. What? Thrace stopped. That's how long before Brutus gets out. Your containment cages are Drenthi made, Model 7. Good for most species. Not for him. She tilted her head. He's already noticed the weakness in the lower left seal. The one where the metal didn't quite bond right during manufacturing. Happens about 0.3% of the time with that model. Thrace's laugh was uncertain now. The cage will hold. Sure, the girl agreed. For 48 hours. Maybe 49 if you're lucky. She sat back down on her bench, crossing her legs. When he gets out, he'll come find you first. Honey badgers have excellent spatial memory and a gift for holding grudges. They've been documented killing venomous snakes 4 times their size. They've attacked lions. They don't know how to quit. And they absolutely don't know how to forgive. Ridiculous, Thrace said, but he was looking at the badger with new eyes. Brutus had stopped struggling. The creature hung in Thrace's grip, utterly still, those small black eyes fixed on the warden's face, watching, remembering. Your choice, the girl said cheerfully. Take him away if you want. I'll wait. I've gotten good at waiting. She paused. But when Brutus finds you in 48 hours, make sure you're somewhere with really good medical facilities. You're going to need them. The corridor was silent except for the hum of the ventilation system and the distant clang of metal somewhere in the station's depths. Thrace stood frozen for a long moment. Then, moving carefully, he stepped back into the cell and set Brutus down on the floor. The badger immediately trotted over to the child and sat beside her, radiating smug satisfaction. Smart decision, the girl said. She reached down and scratched behind Brutus's ears. The animal made a sound somewhere between a purr and a chainsaw warming up. Now then. You wanted to talk? Thrace straightened, trying to recover his authority. You're in violation of 73 station codes. Unauthorized presence, failure to register, possession of dangerous fauna, and I'm 8. The girl interrupted. None of those laws apply to minors traveling under parental supervision. You have no parents here, don't I? She smiled again. That same unsettling expression. How thoroughly did you check? I saw Krell frantically scrolling through his datapad. His scales went pale. Sir, he whispered. There's a ship registered to... Oh no. What? Thrace demanded. Captain Winters, human. Currently listed as shopping in the commercial district. Return time. Approximately 3 hours. Krell's voice climbed an octave. The girl is registered as crew. Family crew. This is his daughter. My organs tried to climb out through my sensory stalks. Captain Marcus Winters was a name that appeared in cautionary briefings. Former Earth military, decorated in conflicts I couldn't pronounce. Now running cargo routes through sectors where sane beings didn't travel. His ship, the Defiant Memory, had survived encounters that should have been mathematically impossible. And we'd locked up his child. Thrace's faceplates shifted through several colors. Why didn't you identify yourself? The girl shrugged. You didn't ask nicely. You just grabbed me, dragged me here, and threatened Brutus. She stood up again, moving to the bars. My dad taught me that bullies need to learn lessons. So I thought I'd wait and see how long it took you to figure out your mistake. This is still a violation. Thrace tried weakly. The animal is a registered emotional support animal, the girl finished. Certified by the Interplanetary Animal Therapy Board. Got his papers and everything. Dad made sure of that after the incident on Proxima Station. She paused. You do remember the incident on Proxima Station, right? I did. Everyone did. A security team had tried to separate a human trader from her service dog. The humans had responded by filing 17 different legal complaints, staging protests that shut down 3 concourses, and ultimately getting the station administrator removed from his position. Humans were terrifyingly good at bureaucratic warfare when their animals were involved. I want to speak to my father, the girl said, her voice hardening. Now, before this gets more complicated than it needs to be. Thrace looked at me. I looked at Krell. Krell looked at his datapad like it might contain an escape pod. Communication to Captain Winters. Commercial district. Thrace finally ordered, his voice hoarse. Priority signal. The response came in less than 30 seconds. This is Winters. The voice crackling through the comm was calm, controlled, and somehow more frightening than if he'd been shouting. I'm going to assume you have a very good explanation for why my daughter's tracking signal is coming from detention block 7. Captain Winters, this is Warden Thrace. Your daughter was found unaccompanied in a restricted. She was waiting for me at the coordinates I specified while I handled supply negotiations. Those coordinates were well within civilian accessible zones per station maps filed with traffic control. Try again. Sweat was forming on Thrace's scales. I didn't know Brutaxians could sweat. The honey badger represents a safety. Brutus has current certification from 3 separate medical boards, vaccination records up to date as of last week, and a temperament assessment signed by a xenobiologist with 40 years of experience. Which of those documents would you like me to forward to the station administrator? Or should I just send them all directly to the Interspecies Safety Commission? The girl was grinning now. Brutus made that chainsaw purring sound again. There's been a misunderstanding, Thrace said, quickly. Your daughter is free to go. We apologize for the inconvenience. Misunderstanding, Winters repeated flatly. Kira, are you hurt? No, Dad. The girl, Kira, called out. I'm fine. Brutus is fine. The nice warden was just explaining station regulations. Was he? The temperature in the corridor seemed to drop several degrees. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Kira will remain exactly where she is until I arrive. If anything else happens to her, or to Brutus, I will exercise every legal remedy available under the Consolidated Station Accord. Are we clear? Crystal, Thrace managed. The comm cut off. Kira sat back down, looking enormously pleased with herself. Brutus climbed into her lap, circled twice, and curled up like the universe's most dangerous house cat. You knew, I said before I could stop myself. You knew we'd eventually figure out who you were. You were just waiting for us to panic. She looked at me, and for a moment, I saw past the 8-year-old exterior to something much older and considerably more tactical. My dad says, the best defense is letting your opponent defeat themselves, Kira said. So I waited. And you did. She scratched Brutus's head. Besides, Brutus gets cranky when people are rude. This way worked out better for everyone. The threat about the cage, Krell whispered. Was that real? Kira's smile widened. Want to find out? Nobody answered. We stood in uncomfortable silence for the next 14 minutes and 37 seconds. I counted every single one of them. When Captain Winters arrived, he looked exactly like his file photos. Tall for a human, maybe 6'2", with gray threading through dark hair and eyes that had seen too much. He wore civilian clothes, cargo pants and a worn jacket, but moved with military precision. He took one look at his daughter, one look at Brutus, and one very long look at Warden Thrace. Status? He asked Kira. All good, Dad. Nobody touched me after the initial grab. Brutus stayed. Calm. She paused. Mostly calm. Understood. Winters turned to Thrace. Open the cell. Thrace practically lunged at the control panel. The barrier dissolved. Kira stood up. Brutus cradled in her arms. She walked out calmly, not hurrying, and stood beside her father. Winters put a hand on her shoulder. Anything else we need to discuss? He asked Thrace. No, sir. We're very sorry for the confusion. Make sure it doesn't happen again. Winters looked at each of us in turn. To anyone. Humans travel with their animals. That's non-negotiable. And our children don't get grabbed and locked up because some security officer is having a power trip. Understood, Thrace said, sounding like he'd aged 10 cycles in the past 20 minutes. Winters nodded once. Then he looked down at Kira. Supplies are loaded. Ready to go home? Ready, she confirmed. They turned to leave. Brutus looked back over Kira's shoulder, made eye contact with Thrace, and showed every single one of his teeth. The message was clear. I'm watching you. After they'd gone, the corridor stayed silent for a long time. Finally, Krell spoke. Did we just get tactically outmaneuvered by an 8-year-old human and her pet? I thought about it. Yes, we did. Thrace said nothing. He just walked slowly back to his office, moving like someone who'd just received a comprehensive education in why you don't mess with human families. I made a note in my personal log. Honey badgers, terrifying. Human children, possibly more terrifying. Human children with honey badgers, avoid at all costs. The lesson was worth remembering. 3 weeks later, I was transferred to dock management. Apparently, my diplomatic handling of the winter situation had impressed someone in administration who didn't realize I'd spent most of that encounter contemplating a career change to asteroid mining, which is how I found myself standing on loading platform 12 when the defiant memory requested emergency docking clearance. Captain Winters reports critical medical situation, the comm officer announced, her voice tight. Requesting immediate berth and priority access to medical facilities. My sensory stalks went rigid. Grant it. Full priority. And notify Station Medical to prep trauma bay. The defiant memory came in fast, her engines burning harder than regulation allowed, scoring the dock shields with excess heat. The moment she locked clamps, the cargo ramp dropped. Captain Winters appeared, carrying something wrapped in thermal blankets. Behind him, Kira ran with Brutus at her heels, her face streaked with tears. My heart sank. Whatever had happened, it was bad. Then Winters shifted the bundle, and I saw what he was carrying. Not a human. A Quellan child, maybe 6 cycles old, skin mottled with the gray pallor of hypothermic shock. The species was rare this far from their homeworld. Delicate, poorly suited to temperature extremes. Found her in an escape pod, Winters said, moving fast toward the medical bay. Life support was failing. Core temperature dropped 20 degrees below survivable range. She needs heat therapy and metabolic stabilization. Now, I activated my comm. Medical emergency, Quellan juvenile, severe hypothermia, prep thermal chamber, and notify specialist on call. We rushed through the corridors, drawing stairs. A human carrying a dying alien child, followed by his daughter and what most species considered a walking nightmare. The galaxy was full of strange sights, but this one seemed to freeze people in place. Dr. Ven met us at the medical bay entrance, her 6 arms already moving to prepare equipment. She was Hexapod, one of the finest emergency physicians in 3 sectors. Get her in chamber 3, Ven ordered, scanning the Quellan child. Temperature is critical. Another hour and cellular damage becomes irreversible. Winters placed the child gently on the medical platform. His hands were steady, but I noticed the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes tracked every movement the medical staff made. Kira stood beside him, still crying silently. Brutus sat at her feet, unusually quiet, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. Where did you find the pod? Ven asked, working quickly, inserting monitoring leads and adjusting the thermal chamber. Drifting near the Kessler belt, Winters said. No distress beacon. Minimal power. We almost missed it. He looked at his daughter. Kira picked up the residual heat signature on our scanner sweep. I was practicing long-range detection, Kira said softly. Dad's teaching me navigation. The signature was really faint, but something felt wrong about it. Ven nodded, focused on her patient. Good instincts. 10 more hours and there would have been nothing to find. The thermal chamber sealed with a hiss. Through the transparent surface, I could see the Quellan child, so small, so fragile. Her name was Lyra, according to the pod's emergency log. 7 cycles old, not 6. Separated from her family when their transport suffered a catastrophic malfunction near an uncharted jump point. No other pods had been recovered. I've notified Quellan Embassy, I said quietly. They're sending representatives. Winters nodded but didn't look away from the chamber. She said something before she passed out, kept repeating it. What? Ven asked. Cold. She just kept saying cold. His voice was rough. In 6 different languages, like she was trying to make sure someone would understand. The medical bay fell silent except for the beep of monitors and the hum of the thermal chamber slowly, carefully raising Lyra's core temperature. Kira wiped her eyes and moved closer to the chamber, pressing her small hand against the glass. You're safe now, she whispered. I promise. Brutus made a soft sound, almost gentle, and pressed against Kira's leg. Hours passed. Ven worked with focused intensity, monitoring every system, adjusting treatments as Lyra's condition slowly stabilized. Winters and Kira stayed the entire time, refusing offers of food or rest. I stayed too, though I couldn't have explained exactly why. Maybe because I'd seen something in that corridor 3 weeks ago. Something about humans and their absolute refusal to abandon those they considered worth protecting. Finally, as the station's artificial day cycle was shifting toward evening, Lyra's eyes opened. She looked around in confusion, taking in the medical equipment, the strange faces, the utterly foreign environment. Then her gaze found Kira, the only other child in the room, and locked on. "Hey," Kira said softly. "You're okay. You're safe." Lyra's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Ven adjusted something on her console. "Vocal stress from the cold. Give it a few minutes. Everything is healing properly." The Quellan child's eyes filled with tears. She reached one trembling hand toward the chamber wall, toward Kira. Kira looked at Ven. "Can I?" Brief contact. "Keep it gentle. Her system is still fragile." Ven opened a small access port. Kira reached through carefully and took Lyra's hand. The Quellan child gripped it with surprising strength. "My family," Lyra finally managed, her voice barely a whisper. The room went very quiet. Winters crouched down to Lyra's eye level, his expression gentle. "We're still looking. Every ship in range is searching. If they're out there, we'll find them." But I'd seen the initial reports. The transport's destruction had been catastrophic. The chances of other survivors were statistically negligible. Lyra seemed to understand this without being told. More tears fell, tracking down her gray cheeks. "I'm alone," she whispered. "No," Kira said firmly. She squeezed Lyra's hand. "No, you're not." Winters put his hand on his daughter's shoulder, and something passed between them. Some wordless communication I didn't fully understand. "The Quellan embassy is sending someone," I offered, trying to help. "They'll take care of you. Make sure you're placed with strangers." Lyra interrupted, her voice stronger now despite the tears. "I know how it works. I'll be processed, assigned to a facility, eventually adopted if I'm lucky." She looked at Kira. "You saved me from the cold, but now I go back to being alone." Kira looked up at her father. "Dad?" Winters was quiet for a long moment, and I saw a dozen calculations running behind his eyes, weighing responsibilities and risks and futures. "The regulations are complex," Ven said carefully, reading the room. "But there are provisions for emergency guardianship in situations where immediate cultural placement isn't available, especially when the rescuing party has demonstrated clear capability and willingness to provide care." "Are you suggesting?" I started, but Winters held up a hand. He looked at Lyra, really looked at her, the way he'd looked at Kira in that detention cell, measuring not just what was, but what could be. "How do you feel about humans?" he asked the Quellan child directly. Lyra blinked. I've never met any before. Just stories. They say humans are loud and reckless and don't follow proper protocols." Kira laughed, the sound breaking the tension. "That's pretty accurate." "They also say," Lyra continued, her voice soft, "that humans don't leave people behind, that once you're part of their pack, they fight for you, even when it doesn't make sense, even when it's dangerous." She looked at Kira, then at Winters. "Is that true?" Winters smiled, and it transformed his whole face, making him look younger, less weathered. "Yeah, that's true. Then I want to stay with you," Lyra said simply. "If you'll have me." "The embassy," I began, "will be informed of our intention to file for emergency guardianship pending investigation of possible surviving family," Winters said calmly. "Standard procedure. Could take months to process, maybe years given the complexities of the case. In the meantime, Lyra needs stability, care, and protection." He looked at Ven. "Medically speaking, would you say separating her from the humans who rescued her might cause additional psychological trauma?" Ven's expression was absolutely neutral, but I caught the slight upturn at the corner of her mouth. "Absolutely. Severe trauma. My medical recommendation would be maintaining current social bonds during the recovery period. For her health, you understand." "Completely understand," Winters agreed. I realized I was witnessing something remarkable. A conspiracy of compassion happening right in front of me, bending rules without quite breaking them, finding loopholes in bureaucracy that most beings wouldn't even know existed. This is highly irregular, I said weakly. Yes, Winters agreed. It is. He crouched down again, looking at both children. Lyra, I need you to understand something. Life on the Defiant Memory isn't easy. We run cargo to difficult places. We deal with problems most people avoid. And we have a honey badger. I like honey badgers, Lyra said, looking at Brutus. They're small but fierce. Like me. Brutus, as if understanding, walked over to the chamber and sat down, looking up at Lyra with those intense black eyes. Then he did something I'd never seen him do before. He wagged his tail. Just once, a brief acknowledgement, but unmistakable. Lyra's face lit up with the first genuine smile I'd seen from her. See? He likes me. That's decided then, Kira said, grinning. She's coming with us. The paperwork. I tried again. Will be filed properly and completely, Winters assured me. I've navigated worse bureaucratic nightmares. We'll do this right. He paused. But we're doing it. 3 hours later, after Ven had cleared Lyra for discharge with strict instructions for continued monitoring, I found myself helping process the fastest emergency guardianship application I'd ever seen. Winters had documentation for everything. Medical certifications, psychological evaluations, habitat suitability assessments, even character references from 3 different planetary governments. The man had apparently been preparing for the possibility of expanding his family for months. You planned this, I said, looking at the files. I planned for the possibility, Winters corrected. Space is dangerous. Kids get separated from families. Someone needs to be ready to step up. He looked through the window into the recovery room, where Kira was showing Lyra pictures on a datapad while Brutus dozed between them. Didn't expect it to happen quite like this, but that's life. Most people don't adopt alien children they found in escape pods. Most people aren't human, Winters said simply. We have this thing, this weird compulsion. We see someone who needs help, especially a kid, and something in our brain just says, mine now. I'll protect that. Doesn't matter if they're our species or not. He smiled. Evolution probably didn't intend for us to extend parental instincts to every juvenile creature we encounter. But here we are. And the honey badger? Brutus came from a rescue situation too. Wildlife Rehabilitation Center on Earth. He'd been injured, recovered, but imprinted too strongly on humans to release back to the wild. Kira was 6. She took one look at him and declared he was coming home with us. Winters shrugged. You don't argue with that kind of certainty. I looked at the files again, at the careful preparation, the thoughtful contingencies. You're a good father. I try, Winters said quietly. That's all any of us can do. Try our best, and hope it's enough. The Quellan embassy representatives arrived the next morning. They were not happy about the situation, citing protocols and procedures and proper cultural placement. But when they saw Lyra, saw her holding Kira's hand while Brutus sat guard at their feet, saw the way she'd already started to heal in just one day, their objections grew quieter. This is temporary. The senior representative, a dignified elder named Quelm, insisted, until family can be located or proper arrangements made. Of course, Winters agreed easily. All proper channels will be followed. Quelm looked at him for a long moment. You humans. You're either going to save the galaxy or drive us all to distraction. Why not both? Kira offered cheerfully. Despite himself, Quelm's expression softened. He looked at Lyra. Child, are you certain this is what you want? Lyra nodded, her gray skin already showing healthier color. They found me in the dark. They brought me to the light. That means something. Yes, Quelm said quietly. It does. He turned to Winters. The embassy will monitor the situation. Regular reports will be required. And if family is found, then we'll deal with that together, Winters said. In whatever way is best for Lyra. Always. Quelm nodded slowly. Very well. Temporary emergency guardianship is approved pending full investigation. He looked at the grade. Children again. Take care of her, Captain. With my life, Winters said, and meant it. 2 days later, I stood on platform 12 again, watching the Defiant Memory prepare for departure. Through the viewport, I could see Kira and Lyra in the cockpit, the Quellan child sitting in the co-pilot's chair, learning navigation controls. Brutus was somewhere in the cargo bay, probably terrorizing the recycling drones. Winters finished his pre-flight checks and came to say goodbye. "Thank you," he said, offering his hand in the human gesture, "for helping cut through the red tape." I took it carefully. "I didn't do much. You had everything prepared." "You cared," Winters corrected. "That's not nothing. You could have made this difficult. You chose not to. That matters." Through the viewport, Lyra laughed at something Kira had said. The sound carried through the comm, bright and alive. "She's going to be okay," I said. "Yeah," Winters agreed. "She is. They both are." He paused. "You know, what the galaxy doesn't understand about humans. It's not that we're reckless or aggressive or any of those things people say. It's that we genuinely believe family is something you choose, not just something you're born into. Blood matters, sure, but so does showing up when someone needs you. So does deciding that someone else's well-being is your responsibility now." "And, honey badgers?" I asked, amused. Winters laughed. "Honey badgers are just bonus chaos. But loyal chaos, the best kind." He boarded his ship. The ramp closed. The defiant memory disengaged from the dock with practiced ease and slipped into the traffic lanes, heading out toward the jump point. I watched until she disappeared among the stars. Krell found me 20 minutes later, still standing there. "Productive week?" he asked. I thought about Kira, waiting patiently in that cell, teaching a warden about consequences without raising her voice, about Winters, navigating bureaucracy with the same skill he used to pilot, through asteroid fields, about Lyra, choosing trust despite every reason to be afraid, about Brutus, offering protection to anyone his humans deemed worthy. "Yeah," I said finally. "Productive, educational, terrifying, all of it. That's humans for you," Krell said. "That's humans," I agreed. And somehow, despite everything, I found myself hoping they'd come back to our station someday. The galaxy needed more of that particular kind of chaos. The kind that saved people. The kind that built families from strangers and turned rescue missions into homecomings. The kind that came with honey badgers. I made another note in my personal log. Humans. Terrifying. Human children. More terrifying. Human children with honey badgers. Avoid at all costs unless someone needs help. Then stand back and watch them work miracles. The lesson was definitely worth remembering.